Welcome to Troweling Down, Biblical Archaeology for the 21st Century. I'm Gary Byers. This is Dr. Stephen Collins.
You're Gary Byers, and I'm not.
Yeah, that's right. And so we're here to talk about the city of Sodom and Gomorrah and the site of el-Hammam and see what we think.
Well, we'll see what some other people think about it, because there's a lot of chit-chat out there all over the internet and YouTube and about all this stuff. So there's still some people that, haven't really studied much in the last 20 years and seen what we've done and seen our stuff and read our reports. And so we're bringing them up to speed, because what they're talking about a lot is it's not right, it's not correct, it's not right archaeologically, it's not right historically, it's not right textually in terms of the Bible. So let's set the record straight. And we picked some questions off the internet.
So I just
or ideas
got one right here. Yeah, some thoughts that people have. So I got this one now. So our Italian film producer, Danny, said that I should do it like Johnny Carson used to do it. Put this up to my head, and I guess this is the question, and I'm supposed to give the answer.
Well, I'm thinking most people that have located Baba Dra at the south end of the Dead Sea have done it just like that, because they certainly didn't look at the text, and they really haven't looked at the archaeology.
Well, that's one way to look at it.
Yeah, there you go.
So this one is asking the question, what about the route of Chedorlaomer in Genesis 14? Now, you've been talking the last couple weeks, last couple sessions, about Genesis 13 giving us really good, clear direction as to where the Bible puts the city of Sodom. And now this is the next chapter, Genesis 14. Tell us about Genesis 14, Chedorlaomer, and the route that he took.
And I would tell people, please go back and read Genesis 14. Read it geographically. Okay? Now, if you go back and track Chedorlaomer, where does he come from? He comes from Elam, and he comes and picks up a few of his buddies, or at least the troops of a few of his buddies, as he comes over the Fertile Crescent. And then he drops down into Canaan, and he goes down the Transjordan side. He goes down what is essentially the King's Highway.
Now, Elam is where the Tigris and Euphrates River go into the Persian Gulf.
Yes, right.
So
in the Zagros Mountains east of there.
So that's at the mouth of the Tigris, the Euphrates, Persian Gulf. And so he went all the way up the Fertile Crescent, came up around. You would not have marched your armies across the desert. You could not have done
you would
that.
have all died of thirst.
So gone up all the way down, came down past Damascus, I suppose. So
and Damascus was essentially the staging area. That's what the text says pretty clearly, because that's where they regathered after it was all over. So they come down through Damascus, and they come down the King's Highway on the east side of the Rift Valley, east side of the Jordan, east side of the Dead Sea, and they go straight down, and it says they go into the wilderness of Paran. They go into the southern desert of Jordan. And what's down there? Why would you go down there? To hunt snakes and scorpions? I think they had plenty of those back in Elam.
Yep.
I mean, you don't need to come all the way over to this part of the world to go down there. They came down there for one reason. There's only one thing down in the southern desert of that region that they would want, and that's copper. There are significant copper mines and copper operations down. We've been there many times with our good friend Dr. Muhammad Najjar, and who worked down there and knows those copper mines well. And that's what they were after. Yeah. They're going to go down and take advantage of other people's work, steal their ingots, put them on carts. Now they could have actually sent a group with those ingots straight down and caught the Gulf of Aqaba. They could have gone straight down in that direction and
dropped them in a boat
and then dropped them and sailed them around the coast. Or they put them on carts and hauled them off. But they went down to the desert. But then it says they came back out of the desert, and they went up to Kadesh, and then they went up to Hazazon Tamar. Now, some people put Hazazon Tamar in another place, but the Bible says it's where?
En-Gedi.
It's En-Gedi, which is about halfway up the Dead Sea.
On the west side.
On the west side. And so what's interesting about this is if Sodom had been in the southern Dead Sea area, Why did Chedorlaomer, because his next target is Sodom and the cities of the plain. After he gets done with stealing copper from the wilderness of Paran, he's going north. And if his next target, which it is going to be Sodom and the cities of the plain who haven't paid him in a while, and he's looking for his tribute.
Yeah.
Why did he go to the west side of the Dead Sea? If Sodom was located over there at Babadra and Numera, over around where the Lisan Peninsula is, why didn't he just cut straight? It'd be easy. He could have gone straight up the Arabah and he would have been right there. Why didn't he go that way? Instead, he goes to the west side and he's going north. The hills on the east side of the lake come right down to the water. It's almost impossible, even when the water is very low, to make your way along the eastern shore of the lake.
Yeah.
And so he picked the easiest route to get up to the north end of the Dead Sea to get to Sodom.
Yeah.
He could not shoot up that eastern side. So he's going up the west side of the Dead Sea. He stops at En-Gedi. Why? If you're just in the wilderness and you've been there for months and you're hauling a lot of stuff and you have an army and it's hot.
He could stop at the waterfall of David.
He could stop. All the soldiers could stand there, take turns standing under the waterfall and just refreshing themselves for as long as they wanted to. And then they took off north. And they're going north. It's very clear. They're going north. So northward they go. And where does the cities of the plain army engage them? It says on the plains of Sodom, in the Vale of Sodom, which is the Dead Sea. That's a bizarre thing to say, isn't it? Were they going to have a swimming battle? How can it be the Vale of Sodom and the Dead Sea? Well, because the Dead Sea fluctuates over 150 meters up and down. That takes a couple hundred years to do it. Slow up, slow down through antiquity. So the Bible's very clear here. Sometimes when the water is low and a big beachhead opens up, it's called the Vale of Sodom. We don't know what the name Sodom actually means. But the Vale of Sodom, when the water goes up and covers that beach at the northeast part of the Dead Sea, it's the Dead Sea again. So sometimes it's the Vale of Sodom. When the water's down, when the water's up, it's the Dead Sea. And Lane Rittmeier's the one that pointed that out to me. He said, well, you look at the Hebrew, it's pretty clear. Yeah, well, it is. So Chedorlaomer's army is moving north. What the cities of the plain army obviously did was to come across the Jordan. That's the fords of the Jordan. Mm-hmm. To come across the fords and to try to engage this larger, more sophisticated army on a narrow front, probably somewhere around Qumran.
Yes.
And, kind of like what the Greeks attempted at the Battle of Thermopylae against the Persians, right? If you're going to attack a bigger army, you want them on a very narrow front, so your number of soldiers and their number of soldiers across that front is of equal value.
Yeah.
And, it sounded like a good idea, I guess, but it didn't work. The Bible says that Chedorlaomer's army punched through the cities of the plain army, and they turned and fled. And it says, as they ran across that open beach, Sodom, Vale of Sodom area, they fell into, King James said, slime pits, not tar pits. There's no tar pits ever around the Dead Sea. There's tar, but it's hard as a rock. Comes up from very deep seeps at the bottom of the Dead Sea basin. But they fell into slime pits. What are these? These are sinkholes. If the Dead Sea is low enough to create the Vale of Sodom at the northeast corner of the Dead Sea, all through that area, and especially along the western shore and in that north area, sinkholes form, and there are thousands there today because the Dead Sea level today is very low, probably about the same depth it was in the Middle Bronze II period at the time of Abraham. And guess what? They didn't know they were there because these sinkholes come from underneath. They sort of fall from underneath and eventually they break through the surface and it collapses, 20, 30, 40 feet into this big slimy hole with this nasty, dark Dead Sea mud. Well, as the Chedorlaomer army pursues them, These cities of the plain folks are running across what looks like perfectly good beach, and boom, 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 they're falling into sinkholes. And there are warnings today
Yes.
that if you go hiking anywhere around the Dead Sea, you have to register with the Park Service because of the sinkholes. 3,000 plus sinkholes around the Dead Sea today. That's what they were dealing with. So we're not talking about things like the La Brea tar pits, that kind of stuff. We're talking about slimy sinkholes, and it's the difference between the Hebrew words chomer and chemar. And so we're not talking about tar, we're talking about clay, mud, clay pits, mud pits.
In Hebrew, 3 letters, the 3 consonants make up the word.
Right.
And we've got those 3 consonants, depending on what the vowels you put in between, would say tar, or it would say clay.
Clay. And of course, the Masoretic, when the Masoretic scholars, 10th century AD, tried to add the vowel points back in so it could help non-Hebrew speakers to understand how to pronounce it, they misjudged the word. They misapplied the word, misjudged the word, and pointed it wrong, put the wrong vowels in. It should have been clay, not tar, but that's easy to fix. Just go back and look at an unpointed text, and you will never, and get some experience around the Dead Sea, and you'll never say tar pits. You'll just say clay pits.
Clay pits. So that route of Chedorlaomer puts them at the Vale of Sodom at the end of their excursion in the area.
So remember, they'd gone south into the desert, up the west side of the Dead Sea, maybe seasoned over for a few months at En-Gedi, and then are marching north. And where are they headed? Sodom. They're going to go north. Sodom tries to cut them off. They fail. So Chedorlaomer simply crosses the fords of the Jordan and extracts his tribute from Sodom. Doesn't destroy the cities. Just they pay, and they're so wealthy. Sodom is so wealthy, they just pay him off. So he'll leave and go home.
So that whole trip, actually, Genesis 14 says the whole trip was started because Sodom and Gomorrah and the other cities had not paid their tribute. But he didn't go to there first. He went down and around and came back up that way and was going to hit them on the way home.
Yes.
And
there's an extra, years ago, he's not a student now, he's a scholar now, Dr. Carl Morgan, wrote his doctoral dissertation on the campaign of Chedorlaomer and confirming everything we're talking about. So he was one of our terrific students and is now an archaeologist in his own right and runs a pretty cool museum.
Yeah, got a great museum in California. So so that's the story. They get Chedorlaomer and his armies, defeat the armies of Canaan there. Then they go to Sodom. They get the stuff from Sodom. They get apparently from Gomorrah too. They get paid off the tribute they wanted plus interest, I'm sure. And with that, Lot got caught in the deal.
Yes, he did.
And so they took Lot and his family and some
other
others.
people. Mm-hmm.
And so go ahead and finish that story for us.
Well, of course, Lot gets caught. He probably hired on to Sodom as a protector, just like Abraham was the sort of warlord protector of Jerusalem for Melchizedek.
And that's a supposition based on Melchizedek and Abraham after this story's over.
And we had to do that someday.
Okay.
If we haven't done it already. But so Lot gets taken off by Chedorlaomer's army. Now, where's he going? It's perfect, by the way. el-Hammam has 6 or 7 major trunk roads coming into it. That's why it's there. It's a big deal. It's the biggest continuously occupied Bronze Age city in the southern Levant. And it's got all these roads coming to it. Well, Chedorlaomer takes that main road and goes to el-Hammam. Where can you go from there? Anywhere. North, south, east. You can go any direction you want. So what does he want to do? He wants to go back the way he came. He wants to go back up the King's Highway. That's how he came down from Damascus. So he's going to go up the Wadi Kafrain, right from the Wadi Kafrain, straight up that ridge, connects up with the King's Highway, right back to Damascus. But Abraham got wind of it. Remember, he found out by someone who had been there, been part of that army, the cities of the plain army, got routed. But he said, and they've taken your nephew Lot. Abraham said, okay, we'll take care of business. Now, Abraham had a standing army, and that's a whole other story. But Abraham knew how to go. He was interesting. He crossed the river. 2, he crossed over to Sodom, hooks up with the king of Sodom. They have a few chats, right? By the way, if you put Sodom in the southern end of the Dead Sea, this whole scenario is impossible. Or it's terribly inconvenient. But Abraham's just up at Jerusalem, where he's actually in the area of Hebron. And he pops over and he goes down and he chases after Chedorlaomer. But he doesn't go to the King's Highway.
Which is up on the plateau.
It's brilliant, because he's more or less got a guerrilla army. And so what he does, he goes over to Sodom across the river, northeast of the Dead Sea, and then he takes the road from Sodom up, straight up the valley to Laish, to Dan, to Tel Dan. He goes to Laish. Why did he do that? Because he doesn't want to be detected by Chedorlaomer's rear guard. So he takes the valley road completely out of sight, and he catches up with he goes to Tel Dan, catches up with Chedorlaomer at Hobah, just north of Damascus, and defeats him. Gets Lot back, takes the spoils of war back to the king of Sodom, gives them back to the king of Sodom, and there's another story that spins off of that, which is really interesting, but we don't have time to do that now.
We don't have time for that now. Okay, so the question was, what about the route of Chedorlaomer?
It confirms the northern Sodom, north and east of the Dead Sea. Southern Sodom makes absolutely no sense for the story of Genesis 14.
Well, you heard it here first, maybe last, but that's how it looks. So we're glad to have you join us. We're answering questions about the excavations at el-Hammam, how it relates to the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. Hopefully we've illuminated the Bible, or at least got you to go look at the Bible again. That was Genesis 14 today. Thanks for joining us. We got some more questions on the table. We'll be back next time.